Sometimes it's just about taking time for yourself. And if that looks like for some people having a glass of wine and having a big breather and watching an episode of Netflix, why is that not selfish? Hello and welcome to another podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and on YouTube by the Fit Minds Podcast. Coach Mariah Jean here. Yes, I'm standing in my kitchen cooking dinner. This is the most efficient podcast I think I will ever have filmed because I just had to get shit done tonight. And I'm like, you know what, I've got to do a podcast, but I don't have the time to sit at a desk and do nothing. So here's me multitasking as a mother, drinking water as well at the same time. Look at me go. I can't remember the last time I had water, but here it is. I got a Stanley. You're getting like a bit of ASMR if you're on Spotify at the moment. Okay, we're good to go. So this podcast is about, what is this podcast about? The erratic mind of Mariah. I'm actually, just for those at home, if you can't smell what I'm cooking some chicken patties, chicken zucchini burgers, and double veg. I've got some zucchini in this pot as well, broccoli, capsicum, I think that's it in there, and then potato and pumpkin in the bottom. So I'm going to mash potato and pumpkin and like roll it into little balls for my toddler to eat, and me, because let's be honest, who doesn't like eating little mashed potato balls? Add some salt and pepper. And the top, I've got to really boil the veggies or she won't eat them because it's the texture. If you haven't noticed, toddlers don't really have, like, they've got teeth, but, you know, they don't really know that, have that skill and not adept at being able to, like, mash and chew things properly. So I've found that veggies, it's not that she doesn't like veggies, it's that they need to be soft enough for her to actually be able to chew through. Otherwise, she'll just spit them out. And so that's where we often assume that toddlers just don't like veggies. It's not actually the taste, it's the texture. And they just end up then not eating them as a habit over time. Anyway, I'm not going to go into children's nutrition. But what I will say, this podcast is about exercise not being selfish, right? So the title says, exercise is not selfish. Let's dive into that. Let's talk about it. How many times have you thought about getting back into your exercise regime as a mum and then thought to yourself, no, I shouldn't, because I should be cooking dinner, right? Or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. I should be doing something else. I should be taking the clothes off the line. I should be mowing the lawn, feeding the pets. No, there's a massive list I've got to do. I've got to get prepared for my daughter's, recital concert or whatever it might be, or I don't know. Right? And so there's this massive long list of all the things that we think we should be doing instead of exercising. And so this whole like mum guilt, dad guilt, whatever you want to freaking call it, work guilt, even if you don't have kids and you just feel guilty and you feel like you're being selfish because you're exercising, is a load of bullshit. It's bullshit. All right? I mean, when did it become a luxury to get exercise in? And when did we treat it societally as a luxury? When did we start telling mothers and fathers that exercising is a luxury? Oh, I'd love to have that luxury. Stop doing it to your friends, all right? And stop perceiving other people that way as well. For example, even myself. Oh, you've got the luxury of exercising 3 times a week. No, I don't. No, I don't. I choose to. And oftentimes too, it's this idea that like our surrounds and our confinements is what's stopping us from exercising, when really it's not our situation or our environment, it's the way that we've set ourselves up, right? It's like fundamentally, I said this before having Lila, yes, I've only got one baby. I've also got I've got a dog with a severe back injury as well that I'm looking after. And we don't have a lot of close family support, so we're kind of trying to do this on our own, running a company. Myself, I've got staff members, and Alex is really busy as well. He works full time too, and then managing all this sickness and teething and shit. I'm aware people have it harder. There are people who've got multiple children and they've got harder situations. But what I want to say is that the theme of this podcast is exercise is not selfish. And oftentimes a mother will restrict herself or hold herself back, or a father, because they have this idea in their mind that if they go and exercise, that they could be doing something for their kids, or they could be doing something for their partner, or they could be doing something else other than exercising because it's selfish to go and take time to exercise. Newsflash, it's not even that long when you go and exercise. Half an hour, 45 minutes. If you cannot give yourself permission to take 30 to 45 minutes a day, but you dedicate the remainder of your day for the other living human beings in your life, you must question, do you exist for others or do you exist for yourself and then others? And I wouldn't say that you need to come before other people, but how are you meant to show up? I say this all the time, and people don't seem to listen much about it, but how are you meant to show up for the people that you care about if you don't even show up for yourself? Like we say it all the time, if you have emergency workers or you have, police officers or whatever, imagine if they came and they came to the scene of a crime or an accident and they hadn't slept at all, right? Would you want them working on your son or your daughter if they were fighting for their life? Would you want a police officer, trying to find, I don't know, some criminal that's committed some crime against your family? Touch wood, that doesn't happen. But let's say you had a police officer that was working on your case, and let's say that he wasn't eating well, he was about to have a heart attack, he wasn't looking after himself, and you could tell, right? Would you want him working on your case? No. Why not? Because you'd think, that guy's probably not fit to be able to do this, right? If we don't think about ourselves as a commodity, so you think about yourself as, I think about myself for my daughter as, if I don't sleep, which I haven't slept very well for a long time, but if I'm trying not to focus on sleep when I can instead of doing everything else, if I'm not getting exercise, I'm just sitting on my bum and going, all right, well, I'll just do everything for everybody else other than going to the gym or other than going for a walk. If I don't get some form of exercise in daily, whether it be a walk or the gym or both, somehow I'm going to find time for both on some days. Don't ask me why. I do voice recordings and I'll type back to clients while I'm walking. I'll take phone calls while I'm walking. But if I don't find that time, over time, I not only start to resent motherhood, and I know you do too, and even dads do it as well. There is a small part of you that resents being a mum. And then not just that, but I start to crumble from the inside out. Like everything falls apart. I'm shitty, cranky, tired, pissed off. Not eating well as well comes into that. But this concept that exercise is selfish, it has to stop. It has to stop. The mum next door that's taking herself to the gym a few times a week, she's not selfish for exercising, okay? Never say that to a person ever again. If you see a mother who is exercising, going to the gym, going for walks, unless that is all she's doing and she never spends time with her kids, and even then it's not your business what she does with her family, right? Because it's not. They're not your kids. Think about the way you view other people and your own exercise. If you feel so guilty for it and you feel like it's being selfish, does it not say more about you and your preconceived ideas that you're a slave to your family? Or does it say anything about the person that you're projecting that onto, right? And 9 times out of 10, it is the way that we perceive ourselves, right? There is not a single woman on this earth, maybe there is, in some very rare percentage of the population who love being nothing but housewife, mum, all of that. Good for you. Great. If you don't want to get exercise in, if you just think, you know what, it's not for me and this is my life and I love it, awesome. You're not bothering anybody. I mean, it may not be super healthy for you and you may not live as long, but that's okay. That's your choice. But if you know in the back of your mind, I want to be healthier, I want to lose some body fat, I want to see some more definition, not just that, I want to feel better, I want to feel stronger, I want to feel happier, I want to feel more content, I want to come home and actually feel like I want to rock up for my family, like I do, cooking dinner for my family because I've been for my walk, right? And I don't train today, which is awesome, but it's like I would not be able to show up for them in the same way, smiling, happy, energized, revitalized, recharged, having that time for myself. Sometimes it's just about taking time for yourself. And if that looks like for some people having a glass of wine and having a big breather and watching an episode of Netflix, why is that not selfish? Why is exercise selfish versus that? I would actually perceive drinking alcohol and watching Netflix to be more selfish than taking time to exercise as a mother. That's like a massive penny drop statement, right? Boom, mic drop, done. Drinking alcohol and watching Netflix and checking out is more selfish than going and exercising. Fight me. Because it's true. But yet as a society, we have engineered motherhood and our perceptions of motherhood, and certainly the negative connotations in association with our different roles and stereotypes as exercise is selfish, right? But it's giving back to yourself in a way that gives back to your kids. It's actually giving back to your kids through you. Exercise is necessary. Do you know the things that happen when your body exercises, when you move into an exercise state, whether it be low steady state, whether it be gym, whatever it might look like, going for a swim, your heart rate increases, you expend more energy, okay? You can fat burn if you're in a calorie deficit, awesome. So then we see things like improvements in your self-esteem, your mental health, you get endorphin releases, right? You get happy hormones that release. And so if you're struggling with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, exercise is one of the best things you can do for that, for the safety of your child, for your newborn. Yes, even if you're taking 20 minutes to separate yourself from you and your baby, even if someone is holding the baby and they're going off and crying for a little bit and on and off, and I'm not into that cry it out, I never was, each to their own. But I know with Lila that I could give her to Alex for 20 minutes or half an hour, and she would scream on and off sometimes in the early days, and I had to leave the house. I had to go to the gym because I could not stay home and hear her cry. So I do understand that. A mum hearing her baby cry, it's like an instinctive thing. This isn't me saying leave your baby at home to cry, but I was probably going to the gym maybe once a week, maybe once or twice a week. And then some weeks I couldn't go because we'd go through a regression or whatever it might have looked like. But whenever I wasn't going to the gym, it wasn't because I was saying to myself that I felt selfish for leaving her. It was more about the stage we were going through. I kept trying to go back. Like the next week I'd be like, okay, let's see if we can go now. And let's see if, I would go when she slept for 20 minutes or half an hour, because obviously when they're really little, they do that. And as they get older, obviously. Do you know one of the times I train most on weekends now is in her midday nap. So from 12 to 2:30, I go and train. Because I'm like, I could sleep, but if I've got enough sleep the night before with her, I'm like, I'll go train, or I can nap and then wake up and train with her because I'm not going to sleep for 2.5 hours. Whatever that looks like. But it's like, instead of holding that guilt and thinking I'm being selfish, I'll just go when she's sleeping. Because then it's like, well, I'm not being that selfish do you know what I mean? If I'm going while she's sleeping, I'm not really that selfish. She's sleeping. Alex is also sleeping at the same time as her. But in those early days, it was definitely hard. It was very, very hard. Trust me when I say there was sometimes a week or two where I wouldn't go to the gym and I would just take her for a walk. But that's a form of exercise. I would take her out with me. I would put her in the carrier. I'd put her in the pram. If the pram didn't work, I'd put her in the wrap carrier, the newborn carrier. I kept trying as much as I could to get moving because I knew that there were these mentally devastating associations and ramifications for not moving and not exercising. I knew that it was a very slippery slope. I knew that there was a version of me previously that existed that didn't exercise, that was fucking miserable. Before children, before my own fitness journey. And so I know even now, mothers who don't exercise, who are listening to this podcast, or maybe mums who are really struggling to exercise, I know how miserable it makes you not to be able to do it. But it doesn't mean that your happiness and feeling good about something is selfish, right? You do not have to associate selflessness with feeling like shit, right? Selflessness comes and goes. It goes in waves. Mothers, we're 99% selfless, and then there's that 1% that needs to be left over for us. But if we don't leave it over for us, what is left? We're like an empty shell. We're like a carcass. We have nothing at the bottom. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And we shouldn't be doing that when we're looking after little people. We should be in a state where we're coming back from whatever we're doing, if it's half an hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes to go for a walk by yourself, and then maybe the baby cracks it and you come home, but at least you tried. You are not being selfish. You are not, and you were not ever being selfish. There is no state where this is selfish. Unless you are entirely absent and you are not parenting at all and you've disappeared off the face of the earth and you don't exist in your children's lives at all, right? But even then, someone's perception of what is selfish versus not is completely different, okay? If you're exercising, twice a day at the gym and you're going for walks and you're never home and your partner's always doing the cooking and the cleaning and, they're not getting time for themselves, at all, and the balance is just completely askew, maybe, I don't know, maybe. But even then, if it's a short-term goal, let's say you're going, you know what, I need to dedicate myself to this. I've got to lose 20 kilos because of XYZ health reasons. And maybe the balance is just that maybe even after pregnancy, after having a baby, maybe it's like, okay, you know what, I just carried this baby for 9 months. You know, my partner might take more of the load for 3, 6, whatever months, a year until I'm back at myself again, right? It might be that, yes, you know, as time goes on, you might spend maybe one day more time out of the house than the other. Tonight, Alex is out of the house. He's exercising and I'm cooking. We just take it in turns. But if it's like a little bit out of balance where like, okay, you're like, okay, like I'm exercising more than I was before and maybe more than my partner is, it doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you selfish. Why? Because there is a purpose behind what you are doing. You are not only setting an example for your children, not necessarily from a weight loss perspective, but about setting your mind to something and making decisions to look after yourself. If you want your kids to be self-sustainable at some stage, they're going to have to learn from someone, from somewhere, how to do that in not just a couple of facets, not just how to tie their shoelaces and how to get themselves dressed, how to cook dinner and how to do the dishes, because that's all jobs that we pass on, or I suppose tasks or skills that we pass on to our children. But also things like how to exercise regularly, how to drink water, right? How to get more sleep. Like the stuff that should actually be at the top of the pile that is at the bottom of the pile. And the interesting thing is, I say this all the time, but I saw my mother when I was a child not exercise as much as she probably should have been, not eat as well as she probably should have been sometimes too, right? And the list goes on. And for a while, I kind of like exemplified that. I was like starting to walk in those shoes. I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was kind of eating well, but not, and eating a lot of crap. And just kind of, it was a big yo-yo situation, right? And I wasn't exercising. And then I started surrounding myself with other women who looked after themselves, exercised, ate well, and I really liked it and I enjoyed it. And I noticed that when they became mothers, if they listen to this podcast, they'll know who they are. When they became mothers, most of them sustained those habits and their relationships with their children are really healthy. They're pretty happy mums. They're not losing their shit all the time. They haven't got mum rage all the time. Like, do you not realize that a lot of your mum rage is pent up resentment and anger that you don't have an outlet for, and where you are bursting at the seams, wanting something for yourself desperately, but then feeling horrible for taking it? And the reality of it is that we don't need to force independence into our children by being distant and being away from them. That's not what I'm talking about. But we do need to set an example for them for well into the future of what is normal, what normal looks like. And if we want them to exercise daily, we kind of have to do it too. All right? Anyway, that is it from me. I'm going to finish up nice and short and sharp and sweet. But remember, exercise is not selfish. Your perception of exercise is what needs to change. And your perception of what is selfish versus what is not needs to change. And the projection from society of what is selfish, especially for mothers, versus what is not, needs to change. And the other side of it is, the other part, who gives a fuck what anyone thinks about what you do with your life? Because at the end of the day, we're not here to appease others, are we? If our family dynamic is working, our kids are happy and fed and looked after and nourished and loved, they're doing well in school, whatever it might look like, and even then they're going to go through their rocky times. But if that looks pretty good, okay, stop stressing. The perfectionism or the perfectionist trait in us is robbing us of any form of self-care and self-love that we could be giving back to us, even if it's half an hour a day, even if it's 45 minutes a day. Something is better than nothing. Exercise is not selfish. It is necessary for your survival and for the survival of your family and your children, your relationships, your career. Exercise is literally healing. All right, that is it from me. I'm going to mash my mashed pumpkin and potato, and then I'm going to go finish my steps. I haven't finished my walk, but I'm going to finish it before my family gets home to have dinner. Thanks a lot for tuning into this podcast. Looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Bye-bye.